Welcome to the Grounded Guidance Podcast, where we explore the power of living aligned and from your intuition each day. I'm your host, Karen Williams. Every day you receive hundreds of intuitive messages guiding and empowering you to live a life in alignment. Are you listening? Through lived experiences, ongoing self-reflection, and enriching stories, I am joined by extraordinary people and thought leaders in their field who have embraced the magic of following their intuition and are sharing their light with the world. Trust that these conversations will meet you right where you are, and consider this your nudge from the universe to listen. Join us. Welcome back, everybody, to the Grounded Guidance Podcast. I am exceptionally excited today to introduce you to Claire Doherty. Let me just take a moment to explain a little bit about her background, and then we'll jump right into really what I think will be some enlightening discussions. So Claire is a highly knowledgeable and experienced woman in the field of spirituality, health, and the human psyche, with a background in physiotherapy, health ergonomics, nutritional therapy, medical intuition, behavioral change, psychedelics, and Reiki. Not only is she that, which is amazing, she's also a championship marathon runner and has completed 4 Ironman triathlons. That just blows me away. Claire has dedicated many years to bridging science and spirituality. In 2014, she began experiencing significant health issues, including fatigue, digestive problems, and really just an overall sense of disillusionment, which set her on her path of self-discovery and healing. This launched her into discovering different protocols and learning about the power of food, rest, and self-reflection. She pursued an education in naturopathic nutrition and became a registered nutritional therapist. So Claire is well equipped to support others in their own journey of self-discovery and inner transformation and guide you in reconnecting with your soul. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to be here.
Oh, I'm thrilled you're here. Thank you so much. So let's just jump into this first idea, which is, how do you get from physiotherapy and health ergonomics to medical intuition, energy healing, and behavior change? You know, from my work and my personal background, I can see the natural progression. But it might seem like you took a left turn to some people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So tell us your story. Tell us how you got here.
So, yeah, I mean, physiotherapy is a very scientific, evidence-based practice. And it conforms to the Western medical model that, you know, everything that you do for your patient has to be based in evidence. And so I was a physio for many years before I kind of made this switch. And it was kind of gradual in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's always been quite spiritual. When I was younger, you know, I'd ask my mum to buy me some tarot cards, and, you know, I was always reading the horoscopes, and I was really interested in astrology and things. And then I kind of parked all that when I became a physio. And it wasn't really until I became really unwell in 2014 that I kind of had this light bulb moment, and I was kind of like, okay, this isn't working for me. What am I doing? And I think it was at that point that I kind of decided that there was probably something else that I wanted to do. And of course, entwined with that, I was trying to research my own health issues and feel better, because every time I went to my doctor, she was kind of saying, but you're really healthy, you run marathons, there's nothing wrong with you. And I was kind of going, but I can't get out of bed in the morning, I'm so tired. And she was saying, but you've got children, you know, that's normal. And I was going, it's not normal. And I kind of felt a bit on my own, a bit kind of like, well, I've got to do this myself. And it sent me down this route of kind of nutrition, and then Reiki, and then another nutritional therapy course. And while all that was going on, I was kind of thinking, oh, there's something else. And it's not, nutrition's great, physio's great, but something else. And I think it was just things kept appearing. synchronicities and people, and I kept thinking, oh, this isn't a mistake. This is the second or third time that this kind of thing has happened. I'm going to follow that and see what happens.
Yeah.
And so I kind of feel like it wasn't so much as me making the decision to kind of go, actually, I'm going to try something different.
Yeah.
It was me following this natural path that began to kind of unfurl in front of me. And so I did. I kind of thought, well, this looks interesting, and it's all the stuff that I love. So I'm going to keep following the breadcrumbs.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I believe that a lot of people have those similar experiences with the Western medicine model. They are feeling unwell. They know that their body feels unwell, but what is showing up at the doctor or the people that they trust within the medical field is not aligning with how they're feeling.
Yes.
And so it's really interesting to hear you talk about how that really sounds like a catalyst for you to explore these other other modalities.
And I kind of knew, that anyway, that as you've just said, that how somebody presents isn't always reflective of what they're experiencing, because as a physio, I would have patients that would come to me with MRI scans that looked completely normal, and they'd be in so much pain, and the specialist would be saying, well, we can't treat them because there's nothing wrong, there's nothing on the x-ray, or there's nothing on the scan. And I'd be thinking, but they're not a scan, they're not an x-ray, they're a person, and they're really experiencing this. So I knew that there was that disconnect there, and that this reliance on really kind of scientific evidence-based data didn't always give us the evidence that maybe we needed to support the person in front of us. So, yeah.
That what an important distinction to make, right? Between, I know in my own personal journey, I have really felt very crazy sometimes going to the doctor with what feels like you just really don't feel well. And to be met with, well, your labs are fine. And, this test is fine. And that test is fine. I know for me, it really started a journey of body wisdom, really, really listening intuitively to what is happening within my body, and really fine tuning what those messages are happening, and really allowing the body the beautifully innate ability to heal, which is kind of this broader conversation. When you're in the throes of not feeling well, that might seem kind of trite, but it really is true. The body has an amazing ability to heal.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Beautiful story. So we talked a little bit about this, but the Western medicine approach really takes treating the body and the mind too, but we really miss the opportunity to weave in the soul, how to treat the soul, which is a huge disservice when we're treating the whole person. And we end up with a system where people are very sick, and continue to stay sick. What has been your approach to helping people create change among these conditions?
So I'm very much now I don't separate, the body and the mind and the soul, which I think is much more in line with Eastern philosophies than the Western medical model. And I see the person in front of me as like a whole being. So that their physical, their energy, their soul, for me, that's the entirety of the person. And if something changes in one aspect of that, then it's a reflection that something's changing in another. And I see health and all creation actually as happening from an energetic level first, and then as that becomes either more chronic or more serious, however you want to frame it, that becomes denser, and then we develop symptoms in our bodies. And so I'm not somebody that believes that there is a single approach that's right. I would never say to somebody, if you change your diet, you'll be fine, you'll be healed, or you just change the way you think. So I think that it depending on the person in front of you. Sometimes the person might need to make some changes to their diet, or might need to make some changes to how they exercise or move their body. They might need to be still. They might need to be silent and slow down. But I think that there's always a component of the psyche, the soul, that is whispering and speaking to us through the symptoms. And we need to recognize that. We need to understand, well, what is it that's going on a really deep level that's manifesting in this person's life? It's either a life challenge or a health experience, a health issue that this person is trying to navigate. And that, for me, is really how I work. So I don't have a kind of like a recipe that I follow. I work very intuitively, but there's always an element of, well, what's going on inside this person on an energetic level that will help us and that can help guide us in supporting this person into a place of balance. Yeah.
So how has that informed your journey? Is it different than how it's informed the people you serve?
Well, I think that my journey and how I navigated that has informed the people that I now serve. Yeah. So I think that I'm learning all the time, like all the time. My clients, teach me about myself and about new ways of being every day, and that's what I absolutely love, because I'm a seeker and I love to learn. I love to find out about myself. So I don't think that I'm ever done learning, and I don't think that I'll ever be at the point where I kind of say, well, this is the protocol or this is the way that I do things, because I think it's always evolving and always changing with the new information or modalities or techniques that we learn and that we're introduced to. But yes, things that I do on myself or have tried for myself have certainly played a very significant role in how I support other people. I am a firm believer that you can only take people so far if you haven't traveled down that road yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Your idea or the way you operate with energy being the foundation of helping people unpack what's happening physically, emotionally, mentally. That is a profound concept. And Bruce Lipton talks about this in The Biology of Belief, about how our cells, we can change what's happening in our cells. We don't have to accept what's happening based on genetics. So how do you approach this with people that really don't have a very strong understanding of this? It's a mix between, intuition and understanding energy, right? Just understanding energy. I think it informs so much. So I'm curious to know.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's a really fascinating question, actually. And it's something that a lot of my students ask me when I'm teaching. And the answer to that is that most people that come to me have already got some form of understanding, or they're very curious, or they're very open to different possibilities and perceptions that maybe they've had before. So it's never really been a struggle, and it's not my job to convince anyone. So I will often explain things to people, and maybe I'll point them to a website or an author like Bruce Lipton. Maybe I'll offer something like that. And if they're really resistant, I just think maybe they're not ready. It's not my job to try and convince somebody. But actually, I've been really lucky with my clients. I don't think I've ever had anybody that has kind of argued back or said that it's rubbish or they don't believe it. Most people are very open and have this kind of aha moment if it's something that they haven't considered before, and they're on board. So yeah.
That's amazing. So let's talk about, can you give us an example of somebody you've worked with, that has had some sort of physical pain that you can wrap back to the emotional pain and then find where the energetic disturbance started?
Yeah. So I work a lot with chakras or energy centers, depending on how you like to think of them. And I see each one as having a different kind of archetypal meaning or a lesson for us to work with. So commonly, I will see issues relating in that part of the body that relate to that chakra and that lesson. And so last week, for example, I had somebody who had been suffering with menstrual problems, a young lady that was suffering with menstrual problems and had been diagnosed with endometriosis. And she had tried to manage her pain with painkillers, and she'd done a few dietary changes, and she wasn't quite sure what was going on, why she had developed this, and and so of course we work on the physiological reason, and we look at all the reasons in the body why a person might develop something like that. And that's important for me to say, because a lot of people kind of think that because I'm quite spiritual and I believe in the things that I do, that I'm completely anti-Western medical. I'm not. I think it's an amazing miracle, and I'm so glad that we have it. So I always consider these things, and I see things as being multifactorial and having levels. So she was already addressing that level, and so she was happy to look and to consider, well, what might this be meaning? And so we worked on, well, what might your body be trying to tell you? And so endometriosis occurs in the sacral chakra. And one of the lessons of that chakra is that we honor one another. So this chakra is commonly associated with things like creativity and joy and feelings and our right to feel pleasure, but also honoring each other. And so if a person feels that they have been violated or somehow abused, or they've been victimized, then they will often present with issues in this chakra. So there can be a variety of things. It's not just endometriosis. And I have to say here that the important thing is that it's their perception of what's happened. So two people can have the same incident that happens to them, and one person won't develop problems, but the other person will. And it's to do with the kind of the lens that we're viewing the world through. So if one person has managed to have really good support around the thing that's happened, if they've been able to process it and release it, then they're less likely to develop a health issue than the person that hasn't had any support, maybe hasn't been witnessed, hasn't been believed, because they can't process what's happened. And so that then sits within their body. And this is, it sounds quite simple, but it's often quite complicated. Anyway, this person we talked through, and she, did share some things where she felt like some of her boundaries had been violated in the past. She'd been in an abusive relationship with somebody who she described and sounded as though they were narcissistic. And so that in itself would be a boundary violation. And then there were some ancestral things that had happened as well. So look back at the pattern through her family. And what had happened with her mum, and her mum had similar kind of experiences, if you will, with relationships. And so this is what we explored. And so some of the patterns that were evident were that this person didn't have very good boundaries, that they actually thought that being in a relationship where somebody was abusive to you was kind of normal, because that's what she'd grown up with, and that's what she'd seen with her mom. And she didn't actually know how to say no to people. She thought that that wasn't a very nice thing to do. So we just worked on putting boundaries in place. We worked on lots of stillness, lots of calming for her nervous system, to try and calm everything down, while she was also doing all the other things. So the nutritional support, and she also was seeing a homeopath, I think, was the other person she was seeing. So she sort of had this kind of multi-pronged approach that was supporting her. But, when I talked it through with her, she was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Yes. So she was completely on board with it. And she was then able to, kind of start to process this and release it.
So There's a lot there. I'm
Yeah.
curious. I'm curious because it's a multifaceted approach, but I'm really curious about the emotional component
Yeah.
in that sacral chakra, right?
Yeah.
Like what has she stored
Yeah.
in there that
Yeah.
just by addressing boundaries, is that going to be enough? Or
Yeah.
what, is it hypnosis? Does she need to go under hypnosis? Does she need to, like, how do you unpack and release some of the things stored
Oh, yeah.
within,
So there's
right?
lots of different ways. There's lots of
Mhm.
different ways. So, for her, there was a lot of her reflecting and
Mhm.
journaling and then allowing herself to basically have fun and to
Mhm.
and to feel joy and to change the belief that that was selfish and she needed to put other people first. So there was feelings of shame, definitely in that sacral chakra, because she'd been brought up to believe that it was very selfish to put other people first, and that if she did that, she wasn't a very nice person. So she just did a lot of journaling around that. We did some inner child work, which
Mhm.
looked like her writing letters to her inner child. It looked like her being creative.
Mhm.
We did some somatic work, some breathing, her feeling into her body, and
Mm.
actually, what is this that I'm feeling? And how can I breathe into that and soften it? How can I try and release that? We did some other things as well to get her back into her body. So lots of things like stamping of the feet and moving the body and dancing, which again were combined with this feeling of, oh, actually, this is quite fun. And I haven't moved my body like this for quite a long time. So
Wow.
again, it kind of depends on the person in front of
Mhm.
them, what they really like doing and what's being called to be expressed within them.
Mm.
But for her, there was definitely this feeling of shame and this feeling of guilt for having, boundaries, which a lot of people don't realize that boundaries are a form of self-care and that they're super, super important.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So I'm curious, I'm sure the people listening might be curious. Is this working for her?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. And of course, she's doing all of the things, she's doing everything that she can, but
Mhm.
her periods are, now regular. She's getting less and less pain with the periods. And so she's really happy.
Yeah, that's a great story. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. I think it's important to identify. One of the techniques that I really like to use with the pain is sitting with the pain. You have shoulder pain, you
Mhm.
have foot pain, right? What
Yeah.
is this pain trying to inform me
Yeah.
of? What's happening with this pain? And that's hard for a lot of people to unpack, but it's important when you really dial in with that body wisdom to just like sit with it. Sit with what it's trying to tell you. I think we're so
Mhm.
used to, like, give me something so I don't feel the pain. The
Right.
pain is trying to inform you,
Right.
right?
Exactly that. Exactly that.
So let's talk about the dark night of the soul. I know you've gone into that portal, as I like to call it, which can last many years.
Yep.
What were the catalyzing events for you, and
Oh,
what has been your reemergence and your uprising look like for your soul?
yeah. So I think the catalyzing events were the last Ironman that I did in Hawaii, which was the championship. But kind of that year before, it had been building up, and I just didn't listen. So I was
Mm.
getting increasingly tired, and I kept saying to people, I'm really tired. And people would be saying to me, just rest. And I'd be like, oh, no, I can't, because,
Mm.
I've got to train for this competition. So ignored that. I caught a really bad virus, which basically floored me. And I
Mm.
should not have gone and raced one weekend. And I rested for 3 days just so that I was well enough to kind of get on the plane and go. And then I raced, and then I was so unwell for about 2 weeks afterwards because I hadn't listened to my body.
Wow.
Immediately after that, I had a very bad bike crash where I ended up having plastic surgery on my face because I, smashed into the ground. I still didn't stop. And I mean,
Wow.
what
These are
brought
like frying pan moments, These are like,
exactly,
hello, the
exactly.
universe is trying to tell you.
Ooh. I look back now and I think, oh, what was it? Well, what was I doing?
Well, with the light on now, it's easy to see, right? But when you're in that dark space, it is hard to know.
I
It's hard
know.
to know.
Well, it's almost like I look back now and I think, God, I had blinkers on, or I was choosing not to see.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to Hawaii and had a massive imposter syndrome. Didn't feel good enough to be there. Developed all these gut issues, which I didn't really understand. And at the same, just before that, I got tennis elbow, and so tennis elbow was on my small intestine meridian. And I didn't piece it together at the time, but I was having digestive issues. Well, of course I was. My body was going, your small intestine isn't happy. But again, I was going, I've got tennis elbow. Oh, it's on my small intestine meridian. I'll do some acupuncture on myself. Wow. But not actually joining the dots. Wow. And then after I'd done the last Ironman, and I was walking, and I met the most amazing lady from the USA, and she was also walking. She's gone on to do other Ironmans and has been back to Hawaii, and she's an absolutely beautiful, beautiful lady. I would never have finished it without her. And we kind of talked as we walked along, and we were walking down this highway in the dark, people were sort of running and people were falling all over, and you can imagine. And I just remember looking up, and the stars, the stars were so bright, they were literally like diamonds, and I felt like, wow, I could put my hand up there and I could actually, it was just a really profound moment. And at that moment I thought, I'm never going to do one of these again. I'm not supposed to be doing this. And
I just got chilled.
Yeah. And I said to her, I'm never doing another one of these again. And I really meant it. I wasn't just going, I'm never doing this again. And I never did another one again after that.
Wow.
So yeah, it was kind of like that moment, I'd had the bike crash, I'd had the virus, I'd ignored all of that. I was actually just looking up at the sky, and I was blown away by the beauty of just nature and just the cosmos. I was like, it's just breathtaking. Yeah.
I mean, there's so much that could be drawn from that, right? Like, it was your connection to all that is, right?
Yeah.
But then also your strong realization that you are never doing this again.
Exactly that. Yeah. And then so shortly after that, I remember the next day waking up and thinking, I think I am seriously unwell. And then I didn't recover very well. And then, my dark night just kind of went from kind of going a bit downhill to this falling off a cliff. And so I was then well into it. At one point, I remember sitting on the sofa and thinking, I think I might actually be dying. And I had sort of all this pain in my liver area, and I had brain fog, and by the time I'd driven to work, I'd be thinking, I really need to go back to bed, and then of course, in a dark night of the soul, which often can happen with the health crisis, one of the things that is really common is that if you don't actually stop and have a good think about what's going on, then the universe will try and redirect you by taking away some of your resources. So I very quickly went from having 3 people on my team and working for me to me being the only person, and lots of my contracts falling away. And I couldn't actually afford to do Ironman, even if I'd wanted to, and to keep cycling and doing all the things and paying for my coach and my nutritionist, because I didn't have the money. And so I was forced to really rethink, like, actually, I can't afford to do this. So I'm going to have to kind of stop. But I still didn't really appreciate what was going on. I kind of felt that life was very unfair, and why is this happening? And I wasn't surrendering to it. I was trying to fight against it. And all the time, all of my health symptoms were getting worse. And I developed this thyroid problem. So, when I look back now, I'm kind of like, well, of course I did, because I had all these digestive issues because I couldn't digest the reality of what was going on around me, and I was violating my own boundaries. and my confidence was very low. And then I developed this thyroid problem because my body was going, well, we're just going to make you a bit more tired so you don't have the energy to keep running and doing things. And if you're going to keep not listening, we'll slow you down. And that's exactly what happened.
It's really a brutal process for those people that are going through it, listening to this about Dark Night of the Soul. There's a reason it's called the Dark Night of the Soul. It is really brutal. I'm curious about your perspective about how when you're in it and then the resources that are pulled away from it. I have also experienced that. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because when you have money, it gives you choices, and also it reinforces your patterns. So you keep doing what you've always done because you don't need to change. But when the money goes, it's all of a sudden, I need to do things differently because I can't actually afford to keep doing that thing. So I see it as a pattern reinforcer.
For me, it was the resources with my spirituality, my spiritual gifts.
Oh, okay.
So those kind of pulled back, and then it became like, oh, is it really happening? Was all of this just made up in my head? And then once, like you said, you pull back the patterns and you realign with what's important, and then everything shifts. So it's so interesting. It is really interesting. Yeah. I'm curious. Oh, go ahead.
I've had other people that have said that to me, actually. Like, I suddenly wasn't connected to my intuition. I suddenly couldn't visualize anything. I suddenly couldn't.
Yes. Yeah. And it's always there. It's always right there. It's just making sure you're aligned with what's really important, right? I mean, that is the really important part.
Yeah.
Back to the Dark Night of the Soul. So as you're in this dark night that can go on for years, for those people that may be listening, it's not just a moment in time. It often can be very long. What was the point when it shifted for you, where you really were like, oh, okay, there's something, it shifted with your health, it shifted with the way everything.
So I think I was in it for about 2 or 3 years. And then one day I was driving down the road and I just remember looking at the sky, and it was quite not stormy, but kind of dark. And instead of looking up and thinking, oh, it's really gloomy, I remember looking up and thinking, oh, it's quite beautiful today. And then I suddenly went, oh, I must be feeling better. And it was kind of just it just began to lift. I think it was because I was more grounded in my body. I'd stopped trying to push against my body. And I was actually, so even when I was doing all my exercise, I was always really humbled by my body, always. So, I was the sort of person that I would go and run a marathon and then I would cry because I couldn't believe that my body had supported me and just kept doing what it was doing. But I didn't respect it. At the same time, I didn't respect it because I didn't listen to it. I didn't understand that it was always guiding me and supporting me. And I think that when I started to come out of the other side, I'd really started to properly take care of myself and to realize that it's a miracle to be here and what a gift it is. So rather than just pushing against and ignoring everything, I was much more conscious that every day was different and that the next day isn't guaranteed. And that also, I think some of the things we think we need and that we rely on, when they're taken away from us, it shows us we're still here. We can still survive. That's just all the fluff that we get attached to and we try and cling to.
Yeah, we are resilient, right? I mean, the human species is very resilient.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not, we may feel meek and weak in the moment of these really dark nights, but we are resilient. I too have experienced that same thing coming out of the Dark Night of the Soul, where colors look softer and the sunset just hits a little different. And you wonder, what is happening? And then you realize that your vibration, there's the only way I can explain it. Your vibration really has shifted. It has really shifted. You're more grounded. You're more in the present moment. You find, you can just find yourself just like immersed in right now. And it's, it's really amazing.
Yeah.
So the only way out is through in terms of our own evolution. And I know you work with a lot of people who are seeking help along their journey, which is wonderful. But this day and age, everything is available right now. You know, I think 2-day shipping, TikTok videos, weekend classes, which is a lot of what people seek. And they're searching for that instant soul growth. I need it done, and I need it done now so I can keep moving. I want to get out of the be and I want to go back to the do, right? So how do you help? How do you help, or what's your perspective on helping people who are on this instant path, that are wanting this instant path?
And I think that's reinforced, isn't it, with, as you were saying before, about not wanting to be in pain, which is natural because we're human and we don't like to experience pain. But I think we've got so used to this instantaneous lifestyle that it's take my pain away now, or, well, how can I get better now, or, well, heal me now. And actually what I try and show people is that they're responsible for their own journey and their own health, and that I can support them and guide them. But at the end of the day, they need to be the ones that do the work. And that actually healing is a journey. It's not a destination that we kind of just get to. My personal belief is that I don't think we ever fully heal. I don't think we're supposed to, because healing is about self-acceptance. It's not about curing, which is when we get rid of the disease or we get rid of the symptoms. I believe that you can be unwell and in pain and still be healed, because healing for me is about acceptance of ourselves and all of the parts of ourselves. And for me, that's an ongoing process, because there'll always be layers and layers and layers that we need to work through. So how I guide people is I try and kind of explain that to them. Well, you know, maybe you've got to this point in your life, not just because of something that happened yesterday or last week or even last year, but maybe it's an accumulation of a lifetime of patterns and behaviors and unconscious beliefs that are only now surfacing within your body. And so maybe it's going to take that amount of time, you know, for us to, well, not for us, but for you to unwind and to bring other things in, which doesn't mean that you're not going to be painful. It doesn't mean that you're not going to feel better. It just means that you're going to have a shift in your perspective, maybe, and a shift in your symptoms. Yeah.
That is such an interesting perspective, because I really believe that we maybe have it all wrong with in terms of what it means to heal. I think your perspective is spot on. Healing is as if there's an end point. Oh, we're done, and now let's put a bow on it and move forward. Right? Yeah. Healing is ongoing, and it's only as good as where you're at right now. I mean, that's like when you take labs, when you have labs done. They're only as good as the moment in time you had the labs done, right?
Yes. They're like a photograph, aren't they?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's, you know, to heal is really a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's not an endpoint. It's not a destination we're looking to achieve. It's where are we right now, and are we healing?
Yeah.
We heal, you know, not have we healed?
Yeah.
Right. There's this big misnomer, you know, put a Band-Aid on it. Is that cut healed? Okay, well, maybe that's where the disconnect comes from people, right? Oh, I had hip surgery. It's healed, but we're healing. We're the journey of healing is ongoing.
Yeah.
And
I think that's really interesting what you've just said about the hip as well, because obviously that's physical healing, which we actually, what we do is we replace healing in our mind with kind of curing. So, you know, which means that everything's back to normal. But if you think about it, even on the physical level, it's healed, but it's not like it was. It's healed differently. It's got a scar. It's got a
Yes.
So it's a very strange concept we've got, isn't it? I think
It
particularly
is.
in the West. Yeah.
So I've been doing this thought experiment that you might like, that has, that over the last year, I've been, when I have felt unwell, instead of using the words, I am, you know what, or I'm this, I'm going to go do that, I use the words, I am healed and healing.
Yeah.
I do not allow the vernacular of anything else to come into my awareness, my body, my thought space, anything. And it has been absolutely astounding. I will be down 6 to 8 hours max. I mean, it has shifted everything. And I'm talking just your common virus, common cold, you know, where you're feeling, it has shifted so much for me, not speaking those words, not feeling them in my body, not having my mind inform my body about what's happening. It has really changed a lot for me. Yeah. So that whole thing. Yeah. Well, and it's really helped me embody healing, right? I'm never healed, but I'm healing. I'm on this journey where I'm healing.
I love that.
And it really feels supportive.
Yeah, it does.
I'm at. Yeah. It's just,
I like
so
that.
yeah. That's I've been watching the pattern over the last year, and that's what I've been doing. Even when it's hard and I'm stuck in that, I just don't feel real great. I am healed and I am healing. And it's amazing what our mind can do to inform our body.
Isn't it?
Yes, it's quite amazing. So you've built this 6-figure business, soul-led business, right? You've done it from the ground up. You've almost watched it crash and burn, and then built it back up. Crash and burn when it was out of alignment, right? When it was out of alignment. When you were out of alignment.
Yeah.
So what is the most important component when you're building that soul-led life and business?
So, you know, it's tricky because you hear people saying, oh, do what you love. And I do think you have to do what you love, but doing what you love doesn't always bring you security. And so I feel that we need to be realistic. Like, we're in this 3D physical world where we have to pay bills, we have to have a roof over our head. And so sometimes that can look like doing what you love. And sometimes it can look like doing something that you love a little bit less so that it affords you to do what you love as well. And I think that that's really important to remember, because I do support people who come and say, oh, I started to do this because it was my passion, and, you know, I spent all this money doing this training and I can't pay my bills, or I've only got, you know, X amount of, you know, money to do all these things with. And I don't want to do the other thing because I don't like it. Well, what else is there apart from that one other thing that you could be doing? And also, it doesn't mean you can't do what you love. It just means that you might need to make a little bit of space to do something that is going to support you while the other thing grows. And so I feel like being really realistic is important. But I also feel like boundaries are really important as well. So for me, I know that when I was just a physio and I was doing that all the time, I was really drained. I didn't have any energy. And although I was using my intuition with my clients, because I would get to the end of the day and I'd be so fatigued, I'd be so wiped out by the time I got home. And the next day, then I'd be thinking, oh, I've got to do it all again. And I loved my patients. I absolutely loved helping, but it was too draining for me. So I didn't have that balance either. And I think when you're in service to people, it's really important to have balance. We can't help people if our cup is empty. And it's not selfish for us to refill our cups, because if our cup is empty, we can't help anyone. And I see this a lot. I see this in a lot of people who come to me with the people pleaser pattern, which is tied in with, you know, a lifetime of being told that it's wrong to put yourself first and that you must say yes to people, and that, you know, women particularly, nice girls, you know, don't complain, nice girls agree. And this whole kind of concept that actually it's not selfish to say no, or it's not selfish to do some of the things that you want to do, because actually it energizes you and fills you up, which charges your battery, so then you can go and help people. It seems really radical to some people.
Right.
Like, what? I'm allowed to do that?
Yeah.
Really, you are.
Yeah. Do you split your time between physiotherapy and this work?
Yeah, so
You
I
have a balance?
only do physio now 1.5 days a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then I do my other work on the other days. Yeah, because
So that's probably been a transition for you, though, correct?
oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So when I was first losing everything, I was scrambling around trying to kind of do all the physio myself, and it wasn't possible. And I was just too unwell, and I just thought, this is absolutely crazy. So I'm going to work 3 days, and that helped me a lot. That helped me a lot, was kind of reducing my workload. And then I did go through a period of time where I thought, actually, maybe I won't do physio at all. Maybe I'll just work with medical intuition and with coaching and with archetypes. But I actually really like being a physio as well, and it supported me for 30 years. And I do use my intuition in physiotherapy. And actually, being a physio was one of the things that led me to studying medical intuition, because I started to notice patterns in my patients that made me think, oh, these sorts of patients always have this kind of burden or this kind of life challenge, and they're presenting with this physical symptom. And I began to notice things, and it was that made me think, oh, I think I might like to kind of really understand this on a deeper level. So yeah.
Okay, that is really fascinating. So let's talk about medical intuition. So you physiotherapy is very science-based. It's you have probably multiple degrees, right? There's not a lot of space for medical intuition in the physiotherapy world, right? But that doesn't discount the work that that you've done, and that the skills you have regarding medical intuition. So I'm curious how that work, the medical intuition work, informs your physiotherapy, right? How do you talk to clients with that knowledge? And then how does the medical intuition work outside of physiotherapy work? Yeah.
So within physio, I don't always talk about it. It depends on the person in front of me. But if I think there is something going on that the person really might need to address, then I will often just start by having a chat about, so tell me a little bit about how you're coping with work, and are you stressed at the moment, or have you had any major life challenges in the past however long? And I'll start a conversation. And then the thing is that there is a lot of scientific evidence now in the field of psychoneuroimmunology, which shows that our thoughts, and again, Bruce Lipton talks about this, and Gabor Mate talks about this, how our thoughts and beliefs influence our emotions, which then influence the health of our bodies. And so people are very on board with that. Normally my clients that come to me, they're kind of like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. And there's lots of research that shows that musculoskeletal problems in the body are very closely linked with stress and with levels of the stress hormones cortisol. So my clients don't normally have problems accepting that.
Sure.
And then I don't normally talk about archetypes when I talk to those sorts of people, but I might say something like, if they tell me that they're really stressed at work and that, they hate their job, but they can't leave because, whatever reason, then we'll have a conversation maybe around boundaries, or maybe about what self-care is. So I just kind of bring things in a very different kind of way for those people. And then outside of that, I do medical intuition and coaching sessions, which again can look very different depending on the person in front of me. So I can do an energetic reading where I connect with somebody. They come and they might tell me that they've got a certain problem or issue that they want help with, and then I will read their archetypal patterns, and then we'll start a conversation of how they might change those. So for example, if somebody comes to me and they say, I'm really struggling to be seen and to be visible, and I feel really unconfident, and every time I try and present, even to two people, my mouth goes dry and I can't do it and I feel sick, I might connect in with them and I might say, oh, okay, I can see that, you know, you've got this invisible child thing going on, and it feels like it happened when you were, you know, such and such an age. So can you remember anything about that? And they might say, well, yeah, actually, you know, I was always told that I should be seen and not heard, or I was told that I was stupid a lot at school, or, you know, or my friends made fun of me at school, so I kind of kept quiet and I kept at the back. And then we kind of unpick this current belief that if I speak, everyone's going to laugh at me and I'm going to make a mistake and my world's going to end. And so we work on the beliefs that they have right now. And we might do some inner child work to try and support that inner child. Where are they feeling it in their body again? What's it actually saying to them? And anxiety is a lot that is something that I see a lot. So people come to me with anxiety, and people often become frustrated with themselves because they're getting anxious. And I like to help people to understand that anxiety is actually just protective. It's just that it's got a little bit too excited and a little bit too keen, and it keeps coming on, you know, when we don't really want it to. But it's not bad. It's just there to try and help us and protect us. And we can tell that anxiety that we're safe, and there's things that we can do to, you know, show it that it's okay and that it can settle. And so that's how I work with those people, you know, always relaying it back to something that's either happening in their life or maybe a symptom that they've got in their body.
So with the archetypes, do you see those as energetic patterns when you say you tune in? Is that an energetic pattern that you pick up in somebody?
Yeah, basically. Okay. It's yeah. So an archetype is like this, you know, set of behaviors or patterns, like a kind of a thought form. They were described as, I think Plato first described them as kind of like these thought forms that existed, and then Carl Jung was the one that talks about them being in the collective unconscious, and we all have access to them. Yeah, and so I just am able to, you know, tune in and kind of think, oh yeah, that person's an empath, or that person's, you know, or you know, that person's an entrepreneur, or this person's a networker, or
So it's the work with that work, and then the work or the information they're telling you about symptoms. It's kind of like putting a puzzle together.
Yeah, exactly.
Really?
So I see that certain patterns present as certain things in certain people. So, for example, somebody that is a people pleaser and struggles with boundaries will present with some sort of boundary issue in their body. Commonly, it's digestive issues, something to do with an internal boundary in their body, for example. Thyroid problems, like myself, you know, I was not slowing down, and I was not slowing down because actually I was in the shadow side of an athlete archetype that just wanted to keep going and going and going. Wow. But some people will have this because they're the overworker or the overachiever, or, you know, whatever that is, and that they're not listening to their body. So it's not always the same pattern. Yeah.
And the pattern probably doesn't always inform the same lesson that needs to be embodied, or the same, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So with your physio clients, I just want to step back there for a moment. Though, how many of your physio patients with a little bit of prompting maybe from your end? And I'm not saying, I want to make the distinction very clear, that even if you see something in your medical, and you know, with your medical intuition, that you would say something that would be out of scope. I'm not saying that. I'm just curious with a little bit of questioning from your end, are they able to arrive at a place? I mean, we're human beings are so wise. We just need to know how to tap into the space and the place to access the wisdom. Right. So I'm curious with some of those the people that come to you for your business, I would imagine, are already pretty dialed in, right?
Yeah.
So the people in the physio world who maybe aren't as dialed in with your prompting, would they be able to arrive at what you already see?
Some of them, most of them.
Okay.
If they're
Okay.
not. So I used to work in a setting where I was treating doctors and nurses and medical staff. And I would say a lot of male doctors know, but females, yeah, and definitely female nurses, yeah. Very kind of open to that kind of thing.
Yes.
Very, yes, so interesting.
Isn't
difference.
it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's so interesting. It's such a science-based, head initiated field, right? Medicine, right? I mean, it has to be evidence-based, it has to be science-based, but yet so many will talk to you about near-death experiences or what they've seen with their patients. And I'm just astounded.
Yeah.
The dichotomy, right? I mean, it's so different. I mean, you're talking about two different worlds here. And
people are, I think as well, people are afraid to talk about it or to own that part of themselves because they're in a world where they perceive it's not evidence-based, it's not accepted, therefore I'll hide this part of myself away. Which is a real shame, because actually there's a lot of research that shows that medical professionals use intuitive thinking and intuitive decision making for a lot of their practice. It's how they make decisions and how they make choices when they're particularly in a very kind of heated situation where the pressure's on.
Like a dire situation. Do we intubate? Do we not intubate? Right? A lot of them are dialed in and using their intuition to make the decision, a life and death situation. And they may not even know that they're doing it, but a lot of them do. A lot of them do, right? I mean, I love that. I think we need to be talking more about that, right? I think that we need to bring that to the surface and allow people to have conversations about that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I was going to say that, do you think that it's changing? Like, do you feel like there are more people who are now curious about kind of energy medicine and intuition?
That's a great question. Yes, I do. I mean, in the world that I live, there's people that I surround myself with that are dialed into it. But I do. I think it's becoming more accepted. Some of the modalities that I've studied, they have them in hospital settings. Like, they have like healing touch within hospital settings, right? And it's an accredited program that you can take within the medical field. So it's I do. I think the scales are not equal yet.
No.
We need to bring it more into balance and often tip the scales. I think there's enough people that are, there just has to be a fine balance, right? There has to be a balance so people feel supported in both ways. Kind of like what you said earlier with the dance between Western and Eastern medicine. I love that you said that, right? There is so much value in Western medicine. There's no shame. There's so much good that comes out of Western medicine. There's so much good that comes out of Eastern medicine, but it's good to have a nice balance,
100%,
right?
100%. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, you developed this archetypal alchemy training that you use, kind of like from the work you've done with your clients, that you've developed and you've researched and you use it with your clients. And then you have those people that can actually go through the training and become practitioners.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So basically it's based on all of my life's work. So it's based on, anatomy and physiology that I learned as a physio and a nutritional therapist. It's based on, medical intuition a little bit. It's based on transpersonal and archetypal psychology, and then on systems. So systems analysis, so how systems work together. So, that is how our digestive system actually works in conjunction with, say, our cardiovascular system and our respiratory system. And then within that works within our body, which works also with our energy system. So, and we're all kind of interconnected. So there's systems within systems within systems. And yeah, I just kind of, one day somebody said to me, I'd love to be able to do what you do. How do you do it? And I said, oh, I'm not sure I can describe it. And then I started thinking about it. And I had a friend who kept saying to me, you really should write a course about this because it's really interesting. People would like it. And I was a bit like, oh, I'm not sure. And then I did. So it's basically a year-long training, and it's internationally accredited by 3 different bodies. On successful completion, people can get insurance to practice anywhere in the world, and they can also register as a coach, a behavioral change coach, or an archetypal alchemy coach, if they want to call themselves that. And it's basically, the concept is that you're shining a light onto people's unconscious beliefs and patterns so that they can become aware of them and meet them with compassion and accept them, and then make shifts in that behavior so that ripples out and has an impact on their life and their health. And there's 4 modules which basically kind of cover psychology, transpersonal psychology, archetypes, and then pathology and physiology, which is archetypal. So a bit like what we just talked about, how people's patterns can appear as different illnesses or symptoms in their body or life challenges. And then there's tools and techniques and a coaching section to suggest different ways of supporting clients. And I absolutely love it. I just I love sharing what I've learned. I mean, I suppose I do teach it, but actually I think I'm more of a sharer. So I take information and then I say, oh, this is what I've learned. This is what's helped me. Like, have a go.
That's a great way to teach, though, too. You have to know it and learn it to be able to teach it. You're in a unique position with your work in physio, with really understanding the anatomy. I would the anatomy and physiology. The anatomy and physiology of the body, right? Which I'm sure that comes up with medical intuition as well. You really have to understand it's not just this like gray area over here. You really have to understand what's happening right there, right? So that could be a program that doctors take eventually into the future. I mean, you can't put any limits on anything, right? I mean, that's amazing.
I've actually got a couple of doctors at the moment who are
really
who are considering doing it. So let's see. It would be amazing, wouldn't it?
It would. I think it would be a great blend of both science and spirituality, and help people really and psychology. There's a lot of psychology in it. There's a lot of psychology in the it's just a really fascinating. It's a fascinating topic. That's very exciting. I was going to ask, where were we going to go? Don't remember. I had it on the tip of my tongue. It completely slipped my mind. I don't remember. Anyways, okay. So, anything else you, how do people get in touch with you? If they are interested in learning more about what you do, how do they get in touch with you?
I mean, first of all, I love meeting new people and I love talking to people. So, and I don't, people often say, oh, I'm interested, but I wasn't sure if to contact you because I don't like being pressured into buying things. That's not me. Just to say that that's not me. So people can find me on Instagram. It's my name, Claire Doherty _Alchemist. And then my website is Claire Doherty, www.clairedoherty.co.uk. And I am on Facebook. It's just my name, Claire Doherty. So I've got a Facebook page.
We'll link all of that in the show notes for people that may be listening right now in their car or somewhere else. So it'll be a quick link to you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So to wrap up kind of what we're doing here, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I feel like we just touched the surface on what we could just go deeper and deeper in so many different areas. So thank you. So I always like to end with, what is your kind of unique wisdom? We call it the grounded guidance. What is your unique wisdom you would like to share with our audience? And then we'll end there.
I just think that it's really important to be compassionate with yourself. So I know a lot of people talk about self-love. I find that a lot of people struggle with that. And so I like to offer people a starting point with trying to be more compassionate towards themselves. So none of us are perfect, none of us. And we're all learning. We're all just here to learn and to help each other. And so I always say to people, if you can just remember that and just be a little bit compassionate with yourself. You don't have to get things right all the time. You don't have to be perfect. And that's okay.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Claire. Thank you for joining us today on the Grounded Guidance podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to our podcast and leaving a review. Your feedback helps us reach more curious minds like yours. Until next time, stay grounded, stay guided, and keep stretching your edges to think differently. Take care, my friends.